Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rogue Wave podcast, talking comics, movies, TV, and pop culture with the rogues who create them every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern on youtube.com/Rogue Matter. We're going to slowly phase out Facebook as Facebook slowly phased this all out on Monday. We have this podcast available immediately following the live stream on all major podcasting apps. Join the movement. Go rogue, roguematter.com. I am your host, Michael Dolce, as always, joined by my cohort in crime, who's in the room with me, virtually. The Lord of the Radio himself, Mr. Hassan Gawad. How you doing, sir?
Why'd you reveal that?
I love it.
You just ruined that. I don't understand. I don't get. All right, never mind. Hello.
No one
America.
knows what I'm talking about. The simpletons. This is inside baseball stuff. Only we know what's happening here.
Well, yeah, that one I believe.
You're on board for that one?
Yeah, that one I'm on board for. Yeah.
How about that What If season finale that I read about and have not watched yet?
Did you? You mean the episode that wrapped up everybody's questions about the entire series?
Yeah.
The last, I don't know. And then, but everybody bailed on it before they allowed it to fit. That's why nobody can handle. That's what binging has done to us. Nobody can handle a long form story anymore. They're like, people are like, I don't see where this is going, so I'm not part of this. This is going nowhere, and the stakes are way low. So I'm not being part of this story. And then the last episode kind of ties everything together. And now everyone's like, oh, now it makes sense. Like, yeah, well, I mean, as I've said from the beginning, like, why don't we wait till it's over to see how it goes? But why would I?
How would you assess it?
Why would anybody listen to me?
If you were to, put it up into a neat little bow, how would you assess the whole season?
I think it's more of a positive than a negative.
Okay, I think
I think it accomplishes a lot of things, establishes a lot of things. I think the animation's really good. It was a lot of interesting stuff. And then there's some parts that missed. But I mean, if you have a season of multiple episodes, you're gonna run into that problem. Yeah.
I don't know if I saw a tweet today and it said that they never bought into the stakes of What If, but it ended nicely. And I can kind of share that sentiment. Like, the stakes of What If to me were never going to be high enough to a point where I'm like, I don't,
it's an interesting phenomenon. What seems to be an interesting phenomenon these days, people coming up with excuses as to not be entertained. And I'm not talking about like excuses to hate something.
Right.
But the notion of this is just entertaining, it seems to be not enough to people to submit to or subject themselves to entertainment. There's got to be some kind of deeper cultural significance to whatever they're digesting in order to make it worth their while to be part of it.
You've said this before. You said cultural significance.
Because it's true.
You're just speaking for the masses. I would sit there and say, for me, it's not cultural significance. It's just,
Well, if you're talking about like what the stakes are, like I don't agree with the stakes. I don't think the stakes are high or anything like that. But you don't wait for the narrative to reveal itself. Then you're talking about like, I don't have time for this. This is not interesting me. I'm leaving. Now, if it bores you, and you're not interested, you're legitimately not interested in it, then that makes sense. But nobody ever says that. Everybody comes up with a larger reason for disassociating from it or disconnecting from whatever material there is. I didn't like the message that it was sending. Oh, the arc was off. The story arc was terrible, or it just didn't seem like it had any weight to it. There weren't any stakes. I've heard that more than once.
So are you doubting that could be someone's genuine response?
I'm not. I'm just saying yeah, there are stakes. There are weights. There's, if you look at the arguments that these people make for one thing, but then why, or for whatever reason, they praise another thing, it's contradictory, right? So it's like, well, if you just waited long enough, it might have given you the stakes. You weren't interested. Why isn't it okay that you just weren't interested? But there has to be a reason. It's like It's like people who can't read, people who are illiterate. What do they usually say?
I can't read. I'm illiterate.
No, they say I don't read.
Is that
Most
what
people
they
say? They don't say I can't read. I never learned to read. They say we don't read, right?
Okay.
As though there was some kind of choice aspect to it. That's the way.
Are you like outing yourself right now? Is there like some truth behind like how would you know this?
Because I know people who don't read. You moron. What do you mean? How would I know that? I'm talking to one right now.
I have a rule. I don't read anything that doesn't have pictures in it.
That's enough. I'm already done. How many minutes are we in? How much more time is there to go?
Look, we got all night, baby. We got all night. This is the beauty of being live.
I ain't got all night, dude.
Steve Ovecki, friend of the show, said he liked the separate eps better than it being made one story by the finale. What do you
think? I more so respect his opinion of it than someone who just read about it.
How dare you? How dare you? We are back. We are back live again. We had a little snafu, but it's all taken care of now. Life is good again. All right, we want to talk about some of the hottest things going on right now in pop culture. We talked a little bit What If, obviously, because What If pretty substantial, right? I mean, that was a pretty.
I don't know. You tell me.
I don't know.
You think it was pretty substantial?
I did my best, really. You know, it's as good as it gets right there. We had two other things happen though, which I thought was pretty good, right? It was the Game of Thrones prequel, right? And Peacemaker teaser trailer. So this all came out because of HBO Max. You gotta love HBO Max.
Game of Thrones prequel called?
Oh, the House of Targaryen, right? That kind of House of the Dragon. Very exciting.
House of the Dragon.
Yes.
Well, it's so exciting. You forgot the name of.
No, I'm doing like 8 different things here. You got to understand here. We literally blipped off the internet while you were talking, and I just got us back. I got us back, and I feel pretty good about that.
I get you. Yeah, so, I understand.
So meanwhile, that's like asking the firefighter who's putting out the fire. You know, by the way, did you catch the big game the other night?
I would ask any firefighter the same question if that firefighter, as he was putting things out, was asking me questions at the same time. So
maybe
said
firefighter was just trying to keep you occupied so that
I'm trying to distract the fire from his terrible job of having to put out.
Maybe he's like, I don't want to be a jerk and be like, hey, there's a fire here, guy. I gotta take care of this. He's just trying to be
I'd rather a firefighter tell me that there is a fire instead of trying to gaslight me that there was no fire while he's putting the fire out. But that's just me. I'm just strange that way.
That is very odd. Yes, I do. I find that extremely odd that you would know and think that way. But no, all right. So it's all happening in a newsy launch event for its European services. HBO Max dropped a raft of teaser trailers, right, for their upcoming shows. So we got 2 in the pop culture space, which is pretty cool. One being the House of Dragons, the other being the Peacemaker spinoff. There was also stuff like Succession. Do you watch Succession at all, or no? Is that...
No, I do not watch.
Supposedly very good too, right? Like that is supposedly a very, very good.
I've heard that. There are so many shows that are really good that I will. I just recently finished watching a show.
Okay.
That technically ended almost 2 years ago. So
what was that? Was it Ozark?
No, I'm not you. I finished Ozark.
Yeah.
Unlike you, we didn't even get through season 2 of Ozark. So
I am just busy working, my man. I don't know. I got.
Oh yeah. You know what I've been doing? I've been vacationing all this time. That's why I got time for television.
I could tell.
Mm-hmm.
I could tell by your background.
Yeah.
You've been vacationing in Nyack, New York. That's a good vacation. No, so Succession's supposed to be pretty good, but we won't focus on that. We're going to focus on Gods, Kings, Fire, and Blood. The wait is almost over as first footage from Game of Thrones prequel House of Dragon landed. The teaser features a voiceover from Matt Smith, who, by the way, I mean, what from a physicality standpoint, what great casting, right? I mean, if you were to picture other Targaryens and combine that with getting like a solid actor, I mean, you can just get anybody who can look the part. But he's a solid actor from the Doctor Who days, from I forget which other film he was in that was very good, but he's a solid actor. So he like kind of fits the part both physically and from an acting standpoint. So kudos on the casting. He's the series lead as Prince Daemon Targaryen. The question I had though, watching it though, was, do you think? Does this for you, just you personally, watching the footage, did it re-energize any interest in Game of Thrones? And before you answer, the reason being, just for the audience, obviously, is the fan reaction to Game of Thrones the last season, and for some people the last 2 seasons, was obviously lukewarm at best, I'll say. Right? We'll say lukewarm at best. To I wish you could erase it from our memories that it even happened, right? I think that's the ceiling is and the floor was burn in hell. Creators of Game of Thrones, you ruined 8 years of me watching the show, right? Is that an accurate fan gauge?
I'd say that was pretty fair.
Yeah. First of all, did you need to see anything to be re-energized for Game of Thrones before you saw this?
Me personally, no, not really. Yeah. I'm fairly lukewarm on any sequel, prequel, whatever material that comes along about something else that I really liked, that I had really strong feelings for. But I'm not against it. I will give it the benefit of the doubt and see what it does.
Yeah. I got to tell you, for me, I feel like there hasn't been an acceptable amount of time that has elapsed to allow the wounds to heal to the point where I'm actually kind of like, yeah. I think it's actually like, I'm kind of like, you know what? I'm ready. And then seeing this, I'm kind of like, yeah, I kind of do want to take another spin down this road that we traveled.
Was that due to the trailer?
You know what it is? It again, just kind of seeing, not necessarily the content of the trailer, but the world of the trailer, to actually revisit the world. I mean, the trailer, obviously, what's it really? It doesn't give away enough to where we're gonna know exactly where it's gonna go. And obviously, it's Game of Thrones, so the MO for Game of Thrones was always the twists, right? I mean, you never knew who was going to live, who's going to die. Now, there is some sort of, that might not be the case with a prequel as much as, in the past, because a prequel, there has to be an outcome. But I still think how we get to that outcome, there will be enough, in there that will, be typical Game of Thrones. But just seeing the world again, I was kind of like, yeah. I'm ready. I'm ready to dive in. I'm ready for my wounds to heal. I don't think it's going to fix the end, though.
Wounds to heal.
Yeah.
The show wounded you, right?
Think about this. So we talked about this backstage, right? Time is a valuable commodity, right? Unless you're like 17 and you have all the time in the world, right? I think 17-year-old. I think from 17 to 23, I had nothing but time, like nothing but time. I could sit and. If I wasted 8 hours, I wasted 8 hours. I'm like, who gives a crap? Who gives a crap? I'm not getting old anytime soon. Now I'm old. Time is now a valuable commodity. I have much, much less of it. They actually say there's an old saying, in fact, that I just learned, which is probably not an old saying at all, but it was a very brilliant saying, that different phases of life, it's time, money, and energy, right? At any point, you are missing one of those components, right? So like when you're younger, you have time and energy, but no money, so you can't do anything. When you get into like the middle age, you have money and energy, but no time. And then when you get to like retired, you have you have energy. You have time and you have money, no energy at that point. It's kind of a depressing statement when all is said and done. But anyway, Game of Thrones took up.
Or you can just buy a calendar and like manage your time, and then you can have it all, But
I don't see how you could watch.
take some of that money, then buy a calendar and
buy
watch,
some energy,
and then manage your time. No, manage your time when when you retire, when you have no energy, you also have nothing else left to do because you got everything done in the time that you were allotted.
So Steve asked me, the ending of the series, did it make you feel you wasted your time watching all the episodes? And I will sit there and say the unsatisfying conclusion did, in fact, hurt because you're sitting there expecting. And I didn't mind the final choice for anybody who hasn't seen the last 2 seasons at this point. It's been a long time, so spoilers, I guess, but it's on you at this point, not us. I didn't care about the Bram stuff. I just, the Bram decision, I didn't like it. It didn't affect me one way or the other. I didn't sit there going like, "Wow, I can't believe it was him." But to watch the creators just ham-handedly kind of rush through everything, it did bother me, because then you're sitting there saying, I took the time to watch and be immersed in this, and you felt the need to not take your time to deliver a solid ending. That was the way I felt.
Yeah, a lot of people have that attitude. I mean, it is a show that was on for 9 years, and theoretically, you were entertained for at least 7 out of those 9 years. So you wouldn't still, if it was a meaningless product, you wouldn't have dedicated your attention to it for so long. It did drop the ball at the end, which is fine.
Yeah.
Which I can see, but I mean, the attitude of like, I dedicated a lot of time to this. You dedicated a lot of time to it because you were getting something out of it. There was no promise. It's a moment to moment contract. At any moment, you could have lost interest in it and walked away. That doesn't make you entitled to the ending that you wanted.
No, but here again, don't confuse the content of the ending for the execution.
I'm not confusing anything. I'm responding to how you phrased it. Mm-hmm. So right. There's it's an entitlement situation.
I disagree.
Look, I know, because it's you we're talking about. So
I agree with that statement. Look at that. Again, I don't have any problem with the
creators decisions. Creators owe you nothing. They really do. You owe them nothing. They owe us
to put forward the effort that they have.
They don't owe you nothing.
They don't even owe an effort. So there's no standards of quality.
If it's their product, right? If they don't put the effort into it, then they don't get the remuneration out of it.
And they don't. But they get me being able to then bash them and say they did a terrible job.
You could say whatever you want. I'm talking about the attitude of being owed. There's a difference. What you want and what you believe you are owed are 2 different things.
I disagree, actually, because again, I'm not talking about. Not talking about the content itself. I'm not talking about the decisions that went in that the characters end up. The ending in just terms of like how the story ended, with Daenerys going mad, wiping people out, with Jaime going back to his sister. I thought that it all made sense, but they were all executed as bullet points, and you can tell that the quality of execution wasn't there it was in the previous seasons, because everything just felt very, very rushed. It felt like they had no time, and we all know they had the time to complete the series. HBO wanted them to, but they chose not to. And yes, we're not owed them wanting to take the time. I agree. However, there are consequences that you will then face as a creator.
And they face them.
And
the consequences of that, people are not interested in the product, and they no longer buy your product.
Yeah.
But that's you weren't owed a good product. The contract was broken when the product was become subpar. Then you're no longer obligated to participate. But people make it seem like I was forced to finish this whole thing, even though the milk was sour. I had to finish the entire carton. No, you didn't.
Of course,
you could have gotten rid of it. You could have just gotten another carton of milk, So it's just a different perspective on attitudes. Like I'm owed this. You're not owed anything. The contract is I'll make a product good enough that you will pay attention to it. Once I stop making that product at a level of quality, you will stop paying attention to it. That is the beginning, the middle, and the end of the contract between creator and consumer.
Yes, I guess in a very literal way, you're absolutely 100% right. But I'll use a baseball analogy. If the guy doesn't hustle out of first base after hitting the ball, and I pay my money to see them, then am I entitled to a refund? Can I go to the
BS? You're there for it's a game of chance. You're there for the chance. You're not there for guaranteed entertainment. I'm
not asking about entertainment. I'm asking for hustle. I'm asking for trying. I'm asking.
But you're not guaranteed his hustle. You're not guaranteed that player. Right. You're not guaranteed that player is going to have a good day. And then it, as we said before, behind the scenes or backstage or whatever your analogy was. It's anybody's guess exactly what the problem was when you didn't get what you thought you were entitled to. So you cannot say you didn't hustle. You cannot say with any definitive certainty that the person didn't hustle. Everybody's off their game for whatever particular reason.
Yeah. Well, there's effort, and then there's striking out because you're off your
90% of the time. 90% of the time, you're gonna be in the wrong. You're in the wrong head. You're not wrong morally or whatever, but you're in the wrong frame of mind when you go into anything feeling that you are owed anything because you're owed nothing. So that's a very different.
I guess we just have different standards of integrity then. Right? Like I expect
if you want to make it,
I'm not saying that it's going to be that. Well, I don't know. I'm talking about your integrity. I'm talking about the integrity of the creators. You have high integrity. See, I would never get less than 100% Hassan because you're a man of integrity. You are the opposite. Of those Game of Thrones creators.
I'm not even arguing with you that they didn't put 100% in. I'm arguing the fact that we were owed 100% because we weren't. Look at what happened with them. Without any spoilers, anyone who's listening, look what happened with Westworld. We were like, not watching this anymore. That's literally the extent of it.
Yes,
we weren't wounded. We didn't walk away like we got hit in the head with a barbell or some such nonsense. We were like, I'm no longer interested in this story, and I'm walking away from it. That's how I was.
Yes.
In fact, which was ridiculous, is I watched the entire third season all the way up to the last episode, and I refused to watch the last episode.
I fast forwarded through it. I did. I just skimmed.
Either way. But did you feel that they owed you, or were you like, I'm just not interested in this? I can't seem to get interested in what the story they're trying.
You know what's funny about Westworld is they did lose me. Also, you're 100% right, but I don't feel that they weren't trying. I just feel they didn't execute. And so it's not something that I felt owed because I sat there going, you know what? They gave it their best. It just was terrible, right? Whereas you get the feeling because of everything that came before that they just didn't give you 100%. All right, let's move on because we got a lot to cover. We've got my favorite movie of the year coming up next. We got to review that. We got a Rogue Report coming up. We'll do this one quick. The other teaser related to the stuff we usually talk about is the first look at Peacemaker. People see this uniform, it strikes fear in their hearts. It's a hotly anticipated spinoff, according to Hollywood Reporter. That's what I want to ask you. How hotly anticipated is this? Suicide Squad, the first movie, was pretty good at the box office, right? But not great. And very tepidly reviewed. The Suicide Squad comes out, tanks at the box office, gets better reviews, right? Critics seem to like it, but does really well for the streamer. It becomes, the second highest or the highest streaming for HBO Max. But at the same time, I sit there and go, who's really begging for the Suicide Squad and who's really begging for a spinoff? The only thing I can figure is everyone likes John Cena. John Cena has managed to rock himself to a point where you just like I love seeing The Rock in everything. I want to see The Rock. Doesn't matter what he is. He could be on a jungle cruise. He could be jumping from skyscrapers. He could be in Fast and Furious. The Rock's there. Awesome. Maybe that's what is very hotly anticipated. Is this the character you would want to watch most out of Suicide Squad?
Probably not. I don't know. I wouldn't really. The thing about Suicide Squad, as far as I was concerned, I really wasn't interested in watching any of those characters extended beyond the story that we got. But I mean, if they're going to, I'll watch it if it works. But I mean, I don't know who asked for. I don't subscribe to this is something that we didn't ask for. I never subscribe to that frame of logic. We don't ask for most of the stuff that we get. We just decide whether we like it or not. There's a lot of things that we've discovered. Half the bands that you got that you love weren't any bands you asked for. They were bands you discovered. They were music that you discovered. So who the hell cares whether we ask for it or not? Is it good? Is it entertaining, or is it not entertaining? That's the only parameter I go by.
Well,
for myself.
But to your usual mantra, we won't know, right? All we have is a teaser trailer, which
that's what I'm saying. We're gonna have to wait.
Right.
We're gonna have to wait. I mean, the teaser was interesting. I mean, it's it's full of Whedonisms, whatever. But that's the way dialogue is done these days. That's the way interaction with characters are done in the modern era. So I mean, I'm not going to hold that against it.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah. What do you guys think? Do you guys want to check out Peacemaker? Is this?
Are you saying that you're not interested?
You know what? I'm interested because of John Cena, not because it's Peacemaker. I like I said, John Cena has become the Rock to me, to where I feel like anything I go in with him is going to be entertaining. He was entertaining in the film, so I am curious to see where they go with it. But it's more about the actor than it is the character, to me. And that's probably the only reason
whatever gets the butts in the seats, though, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's probably the only reason this is even, how is this a spinoff and not Idris Elba's character, right? I mean, that's where.
But see what I'm saying about like the fact that there always has to be some kind of a caveat to it in order to get your attention.
Yeah. Well,
it's not just
it's
like
a hook. Everything's got to have a hook, right?
Nah, that's not what I'm talking about. Like there is a hook. This is a comic book character, a live action depiction of a comic book character that was previously, except for the movie of the previous Suicide Squad, has previously been unrealized.
Yeah.
Right. Us being comic book people, that should be enough to at least garner some attention, as opposed to obligation or dedication to it. But as I'm saying, you're like, well,
I want you to hold that thought. I actually want you to hold that thought because I think it's very relevant to the discussion we're going to have next when we talk Venom 2. Is there too much comic book content out there to the point where it's just everything is watered down?
No.
Well, that's a teaser. I was gonna tease that. What do you guys think? Are you excited for Peacemaker? Is there too much comic book content being produced to the point where just having something based off a comic book just might not be enough? We will discuss everything when we come back. Welcome back to the Rogue Wave podcast. Want to do a quick Rogue report? Go to roguematter.com right now. Check out all the brand new offerings. So we were just, again, to explain a little bit, we were in beta mode for a while with roguematter.com, and now we are officially launching. So there will be new titles every other Wednesday coming out. And right now you can go check out Key to the City #2. Andy wakes up every morning at 6 a.m. in New York City and asks himself 3 questions, or themselves, 3 questions. Always the same 3 questions, and always in this order. Where am I? Who am I? And what is my mission today? Andy wakes up to start another day, only to find himself strapped down in the body of Charlie Stepanski, an elderly patient at Mount Sinai Hospital. A frustrating series of false starts and missed opportunities ends in one of the most dramatic missions of all. Go check out Key to the City #2. That is out on the website right now, and it's written by yours truly, which I always enjoy when I can plug myself in my own work, which is what I'm doing. I'm just constantly working. It's crazy.
Bet you like plugging yourself a lot.
Yeah, kind of do. You heard me.
Congratulations.
Coming out in 2 weeks. Check out Making Markham #1. Making Markham. It's a fun book. This is a comic book. Key to the City is actually an illustrated novel, which is pretty cool. Sebastian Sanchez did some of the illustrations in there. When Doc, an assassin and a hard luck gambler, wages his last few bucks on Markham, a bare-knuckle brawler who fights out in a dingy basement in Morocco, the bet pays off in more ways than one, leading Doc to make Markham an offer that will take his violent lifestyle to the next level. That's coming October 23rd. We'll do a little shameless plug when it does come out. And just throwing some love back at Steve Ovecki as well, too. McBride and Groom #1 in full, digital, all digital. Go to roguematter.com and just keep checking the site. Subscribe to the newsletter. That's the biggest thing I can tell you, because we are going to be offering, there's contests, giveaways. We got the full force of the marketing arm now behind Rogue Matter as we go from digital to fully launched. All right. This is exciting now, because I've been waiting for this for a while. Rogue review Venom: Let There Be Carnage. Now, first of all, you had claimed you were refusing to see this film, but you managed to see the film.
Mm.
I got to be honest, I was actually kind of hoping you weren't going to see it, so that I could just take up the entire airspace describing
You can still do that.
the joy that I had in watching this.
Why not?
I'll sit there and tell you it was in line with the first movie.
I'd rather you stand there and tell me, to be honest.
No,
with
I'm tired, dude. It's tough. It's tough being this busy.
Yeah,
I'm going to sit there and tell you,
as hard as you do.
We're not going to go into how it blew out box office records. We're not going to go into where a lot of other superhero movies that we see now are trying to be either edgy or quirky or whatever. This is just a dumb movie, and it's snakes on a plane, and it's actually kind of refreshing that it's snakes on a plane. Now, I did have issues with it. Spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen it yet. The third act was very strange when all hope seemed lost for our lethal protector and his cohort of bandits or whatever. And how they overcome that felt a little like I was a little like, huh? Like I get. It actually almost felt very Game of Thronesian, where at the end you're like, okay, you're telling me that Danny went nuts, but it's kind of fast how all of a sudden Danny just went nuts, right? Like it kind of happened really, really fast. And there's a scene at the end, so I'm trying to be spoiler-free here as much as human. No, it's okay, Steve Ovecki. I'm spoiler-free here. How much the third act just felt a little... It was just very strange. Now, mind you, another plus to this movie, Hassan, 90 minutes. I love it.
It's not long. It's not a long movie.
You know, it doesn't try to be... It just doesn't try to be anything except what it is.
Again, with you and the time, like wasting your time, like you wanting bite-sized entertainment because of the time you have, instead of like being entertained. Strange priorities.
Yes.
Strange.
I want in, I want out, I want to have a smile on my face when I do. What was your takeaway from seeing this movie now? Because I know you saw it. Because you told me.
Same as I had from the original.
Was it a waste of your time?
Same as I had a week ago when I decided I wasn't going to see it.
Yeah. Would you declare this a waste of your time?
It wasn't a waste of my time. It's just not, to me, it's like, ugh, you know, it's like, this is the jokes aren't funny. The special effects are like alarmingly not good.
They're not. It's great.
For the age of, okay, man.
No, keep going. I'm merely backing you up. I agree with you. Go ahead.
Yeah, but you just said it was great. because they're not good.
No, they're not great. That's what made it great. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, but that's you editorializing what I'm saying while I'm saying it.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, 100% right. Yes. Go ahead.
No, I'm done. You're gonna.
Do you know what it feels? You know what it felt like?
It is.
The one thing I did enjoy in terms of the jokes, though, I loved Venom's little commentary out throughout the first two acts. Though I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was like watching. It was almost as if he was in on the joke at that point, right? He's kind of commenting. He's like, I don't like this guy. What's going on with that? I'm like, this is great. This is great. You know why it's also great? We have spent so much time with things like the MCU, right? And even DC's attempt at trying to emulate the MCU to where we're at a point now, and this is the reason I said this before, where we have so much comic book content that just being a comic book movie to me is not enough, right? It's got to have some extra juice to it. It's got to have some extra hook to it, some extra angle. And the angle to this is I don't have to think very hard. I don't have to watch 8 other movies to know what's going on. It's also a reminder of what comic book movies used to be. Like if we did not have an MCU, right? If we didn't have an MCU, we'd be watching this movie lamenting about how they have once again trampled over all of the material that we hold dear in an attempt to entertain the masses. But for once, I get to step out of that body of like being someone who grew up on comics.
You enjoy this because you didn't have to think
too hard.
So are you saying? Are you saying? I mean, come on. How deeply did you have to think during Infinity War? How
my God!
Was the thought process to that?
First of all, Infinity War is my top 3 of Marvel movies. Maybe all-time comic book movies, too. I have to think about it. Infinity War, to me, is almost a perfect film in that it ends on a cliffhanger. I understand why. But it might be up there as in my head. It's funny as time elapses between these movies and you start seeing more and more movies. There's some that you've seen before that just with doing nothing on its own, it just keeps raising how good it is based on how others are not quite living up to it. Infinity War, you had to think. You were worried about who's going to live, who's going to die, what's going to happen, are they going to get out of this, are they not? There was emotions. I remember really watching it being like intensely moved by Infinity War.
Yeah, that's not thinking. That's just being invested. You're talking about investment. You don't want to be invested.
But there is a level of thinking too, to the point where you have to be up on everything that came before. You also, for folks like us who have read the material, there is a constant back and forth where you're kind of like.
But that's also. To know the lore and to know the stories behind the backstories and the other material is also investment. You don't want investment. You don't want to invest.
Right.
You don't want to have to invest in anything.
Right. I don't want to have to I don't want to have to exert the energy. I just want to go in. It's like seeing, cars race around in a circle. People love that. Or like monster trucks. Sometimes I just want to go see a monster truck smash a car. Right? Like I'm not sitting there doing anything except sitting there having a good time watching a monster truck drive over another car or seeing a guy on a bike just do some wheelies. I don't have to I don't have to think very hard in that. I just have to sit back and enjoy it. And that's what this movie is for me. Now, mind you,
don't want any challenging material. You just you just want splodies.
Sometimes I just want splodies. Yes. Sometimes I just don't want to think very hard. I just want to go in after, all the other stuff that we have. And again, that's why I asked you the question. Is there too much comic book related material being made into TV and movies right now? To the point where it all just becomes oversaturated. It all just becomes clutter. And to me, yeah, I mean, at some point I'm like, what kind of obscure team book are they going to come out with, or team project they come out with next? What kind of obscure character? The Eternals is a great example. I mean, it's like, wow, they're really stretching this to the point where And don't get me wrong, MCU does it well. They have their formula, so I'm not knocking the execution of these things. But just overall, after a while, you have the Marvel movies, the DC movies, then you have other movies being made based on comic books as well, too, to the point where it's like, man, I kind of miss the days where I used to go and watch old school in a theater. We don't get comedies anymore. We don't get, that little indie drama. You get them on Netflix and you get them on Amazon, but I think there's a difference between actually, I remember back in the day going to the movies and you'd get all different kinds of movies. Now, look, it's economics. I understand the reason behind it, but after a while, I get a little tired. So this to me feels, I enjoy it also because I get to feel like how the other half feels, because I have no investment in this movie, because this movie is just schlock. It's just fun. It's just craziness. To where I'm not constantly critiquing it. Whereas the MCU movies, there's a lot going on based off of everything that has happened, everything that's going on, what we do as a business, what we do, what we identify as, and that's kind of refreshing. It's kind of refreshing.
My comment wasn't really in reproach of your liking Venom as opposed to liking some other stuff. My comment was basically that I'm just piecing together the themes that you're expressing about your lack of interest in most other content, right?
Yeah.
Because it's always all this stuff is interlinked or interwoven together. And so basically, we were talking about pop culture, and I was talking about what if, and it having cultural significance or deeper cultural significance, or stakes, like the stakes weren't high enough or whatever. But you're basically talking about you don't want to invest. You just don't want to have to be invested in something to watch something.
Not every time.
That's basically what you're saying.
Yeah, not every time.
Saying.
Exactly. Not every time. Trust me. If there's something out there that's very well executed, I mean, the art of getting you invested is an amazing feeling. I'll give you the last thing that's gotten me that invested was Ted Lasso, right? Ted Lasso was an amazing show. The first season, it's the last show that I compulsively had to binge because I was so invested in the first season. And that's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing when you can find a show and go, wow, this is really great, and I am invested, and I am caring, and I do want to know what happens, on an intellectual level and an emotional level. So I'm not out on those kind of things. I'm finding it's happening rarer and rarer. But to go the opposite end of the spectrum, this thing is not trying to... This thing is just happy that you paid the money. You're going to go check it out. There's going to be some Venoms and Carnages fighting each other. That's it. It's Woody Harrelson being crazy Woody Harrelson. Tom Hardy. I like the commentary from Venom. It's just silly. They knew exactly what they're doing. 90 minutes in, they're like, we're not here. We're not trying to make this any more or greater than what you guys already know it is. And I appreciate that. And we have things like the MCU, and even to a lesser extent the DC universe, to the point where I'm not sad for the industry when a movie like this comes out. I'm actually kind of like, all right, because in the past you would watch a bad, let's say, what was it, X-Men Last Stand, maybe was a good example of a 2000s era movie where you're like, oh my god, what an S show this thing was, right? What a terrible attempt, but they were trying to be good.
I felt that about all the X-Men movies.
I know you did, but I'm going to pick the one that I definitely felt a certain way about, when I'm like, wow, this is.
Oh, then don't say you then.
Well, but you could also agree The Last Stand, right? You also agree The Last Stand, yes?
Well, yeah, but I mean, it was orders of magnitude, with those,
I mean, let's pick another. Spider-Man 3, perhaps, is another one where you're like, wow, they were trying to pull this off, and they didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
which was a sad revelation, a sad thing to discover after Spider-Man 2, which is one of my favorite comic book movies of all time. So
absolutely agree with you 100%.
I agree with that.
Brian Mayman, I don't know if I pronounced his name correctly, but hey, congratulations, you've now been butchered by Mike Dolce. This was Birds of Prey quality good. And I actually argue that Birds of Prey was worse than Venom 2 because it wasn't in. I don't think it was in on the joke. I don't think it was. I feel like there's a wink and a nod when you're watching these Venom movies to a point where, they kind of get it. They kind of get it that, they're not making Shakespeare here. I feel like Birds of Prey, because of the significance of a female action movie, didn't necessarily live up in the same way that Venom does. Venom is just having a good time. Now, let's talk about that mid-credit scene. Okay, and we're going to do this in spoiler-free. Don't worry, this is spoiler-free. Steve Ovecki, you can unmute us right now.
If we're muted, he can't hear you.
I know. I'm trying to signal him though. I'm trying to give him a wink and a nod.
He doesn't know you're signaling him.
I know. I know. We're gonna do the spoiler free. Venom. I laughed hysterically at the mid-credit scene because Venom is like that kid in the class that you went to high school with, who was just always messing up and just wasn't doing the homework, and you're like, man. But then he ends up growing up and winning the lottery or something, or marries some woman who's just wealthy and takes care of him, just something to the point where you're like, how the heck did you manage to just do absolutely nothing and now quite possibly are connected to the largest film franchise in the world? And has me excited to see what happens now. That was my take from the mid-credit scene. I'm like, man, that guy just... That's the guy who just manages. What's the show I was thinking about where he just nothing bad ever happens to him? He just walks through life, but doesn't have the mental capacity to understand all the good fortune he has. Gump? What? Yes. Venom is the Forrest Gump. It's not the movie I was thinking of, but it's a great analogy. Great example you just brought up. Venom is the Forrest Gump of the comic book universe. You're just sitting there going wow. And I can't knock him. At the end, even then, I'm like, all right. I'm excited. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll see. That's interesting. That was very interesting. That's the thing that kind of locks it in, that makes it. That means we're not going to get that particular kind of story in the story that we're already seeing unfold within the MCU. Yeah. So, that's a little. You always hope for the MCU to do Venom really well, as opposed to.
But now maybe they will.
Sony.
I don't know. Maybe they will.
No, because there's already. Okay.
The other thing I have to laugh about, right, is Sony. By extension, is that knucklehead that just happens to. Good things just always seem to happen to him, right? I mean, they probably messed up the multiverse with that mid-credit scene. I was actually thinking that too. I'm like, they probably weren't supposed to show... That scene probably wasn't supposed to happen the way that scene happened. But Sony's like, F them. We're just going to do it anyway. Because we're Sony, and we don't care.
If it even means anything.
Right, if it does. Well, it's hard to not think it does, right? Unless it's literally the cameo.
I'm 90% sure it does mean something.
Yeah.
But then I'm also aware that at any moment they can say, "Nah, it doesn't mean anything."
Yeah, I know. No, you're right. I will.
I mean, Disney took the entire expanded universe to Star Wars and said, "Nope, none of this happened."
Right.
After 30 years of so they can do anything. They really can just discontinue any storyline
do whatever
they want
to. Right?
Yeah. They could just have a bunch of mandarins running around and say, "Mr. Kingsley, sorry, we apologize."
Yeah.
But you were not the Mandarin. So I mean, they could do whatever they want.
Yeah. Look, and there's ways through story to get out. I love Brian Everham. See? I knew I was communicating. I was communicating through Brian Everham. He just tagged Steve and said they're done with Venom 2 talk. So
and he's wrong because we weren't.
Well, no, we won't talk about the movie right here. The last thing that I wanted to talk about with the movie, something that kind of came up, and this was cool also, right? Because Carnage is one of those villains, as Venom was before him, to where I remember the collectability of comics based not on the creator, but on the character. So Carnage was, and I'm trying to think in the last 20 years, if I can think of a character that was introduced into a particular story world, like a Spider-Man world or an X-Men world or whatever, to where you're like, I need to own that issue. Not because it's Brian Michael Bendis writing it, or, because someone from TV is now doing it, or someone, Martin Scorsese's going to write a comic book. Which I think is more like, I can think of, Identity Crisis, had that kind of feel to it because of the creators behind it. When Michael Turner started doing DC books, you're like, wow, I gotta pick those books up. No, this was a character driving up the collectability and interest in the Spider-Man books. And I can't think of another one. And I'm going to open this up to the Facebook audience because I'd love to hear if you can think of one post Carnage that had that kind of impact on the Spider-Man universe or in any universe. Maybe Zorn during the Grant Morrison run. I'm trying to think. And I'm talking about new characters. I'm not talking about bringing a character back from the dead. I mean, in the Joss Whedon X-Men run, Colossus came back, and it was great. It was like, wow, holy cow, this is a huge issue. But I'm talking about a brand new established character. I'm talking about the days when Liefeld used to create Cable and Deadpool, and they became big. McFarlane helped create the Venom book with Venom character with David Michelini. The days when we used to look at the Marvel trading
Last
cards.
one that got me was Omega Red.
Omega Red's a good example, yeah?
Yeah.
Brian Abraham said Red Hulk. Okay. I could stretch there. It is a variation on Hulk, which we've kind of seen, but that's cool. I'll give that a kudos a Jace, right? I'm just trying to think, and that's what it actually made me nostalgic a little bit to see Carnage up on screen. And of course, quasi butchered, because it's, they did say he was a spawn of Venom, but, obviously the whole Venom universe is a complete farce compared to what it was because it's not connected to Spider-Man right now and, all that stuff. But yeah, I'm trying to think, what is another character?
Carnage really never did much for me personally. I guess I was dipping out by then. Yeah. And Spider-Man, yeah, they didn't really. I mean, the last thing that made me kind of reinvest in Spider-Man was Spider-Man 2, just because of their depiction of Doc Ock. I'm like, wow, that needs the comic books need an upgrade because Doc Ock was a laughable character in the comics, up until that point. And really kind of Pugsley and really ugly and serious Dunning-Kruger effect on him. So just to have him done sympathetically and also done with a little bit of swagger, kind of a cool swagger to him, which is why everybody was mainly excited that he's apparently going to be in the latest Spider-Man movie in December, right? So, and Alfred Molina will be reprising the role, even though he's, I don't know, he's got an afro now. That's kind of weird. But anyway,
I don't think we're allowed to say that. I'm not sure.
That's a little strange. I don't know why we wouldn't, but I mean that's a little weird. But anyway, but yeah, that was about it. I don't really.
Winter Soldier. I just thought about that. Winter Soldier, maybe.
Yeah, because I never read that run. I never read. Yeah. I never read. I wasn't really into Captain America, so
Yeah, that's that. Ed Brubaker, Steve Epting run was incredible, and Winter Soldier was. Winter Soldier, I could say would probably qualify on that list. Zorn is probably.
See, I go so far back. I mean, like the last serious engagement I had, like we were talking about before when we were on the show, we were talking about what was that, Wednesday Forever?
Yeah.
About the Fearful Symmetry, or Kraven's Last Hunt storyline. Also, Archangel, when they introduced Archangel,
right?
in
See,
the
that's
fall
another,
of the
yeah.
mutants.
That's the beauty of like the 80s and 90s. We're never going to get that again, just because.
Nope.
And I don't mean that in the sense that comics are not good or anything like that. I'm not actually arguing that. We talked about that on a previous show. There's a level of purity, naivety, and just the fact that we just didn't have mass communication back then, to where you could kind of explore things because you didn't feel like the weight of the world was on every single page that came out.
Well, yeah, but also we didn't have a epidemic of reboots at that time.
Right.
All of it was standard continuity. So whatever you introduce into the Marvel universe, you introduce into the entire universe.
Right.
You didn't have books that were taking place in like alternate realities with,
Yep.
some things in the future, some things in the past, or, every time a new creator came on the book, the whole book was rebooted.
Right.
We used to have to just change the story gradually to kind of walk you out of the last run into whatever this new iteration is going to be. You weren't just like, okay, and now, Dan Slott is no longer on Spider-Man. So boom, now now it's just going to be a whole new day. It causes you to have an installed adherence to integrity of story, right? Because you have to keep this continuity going. You have to respect what came before you. You can't jar everything, because the readers will stop reading.
Right.
They'll just leave.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to walk them very casually, calmly into whatever new storyline you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Now that had its own drawbacks as well as advantages.
Right.
But you didn't have like new event every 6 or 7 months, and just we'll hope everybody sticks with us when we're throwing this stuff against the wall. And so that's probably why a lot of people like, it's like watching a show, new Netflix series, right? People like, you guys are going to cancel it. Season 3, you guys are going to cancel it. I'm not watching this. Right? That's kind of the way comic books are now. Or watching anything that's an original piece of programming on the Sci-Fi Channel, which is just going to get canceled, because they don't have the budget to keep it up. So I mean, that is the downside. That's probably why you don't see too many of those kind of engagements anymore.
Yeah, I also think when we talked about this before too, you now have the era of don't put your best work out. And I don't want to phrase it that way, but don't invent characters for the big two anymore. That's now become a mantra because of the different, PR hits that Marvel has taken with Winter Soldier, with things like Winter Soldier, or Jim Starlin took with Thanos, where he's not getting properly credited or rewarded, credit is not the right word, but yeah, properly rewarded in the eyes of social media. So the life lesson is now you do a book for Marvel and DC to build your audience, and then you go off and do your own stuff and be the most creative and inventive there. Eric Larson said this.
There is a kind of weirdness about it. Like you get a job and you do a work for hire kind of situation where whatever your creativity is, from the beginning that you're working for someone else. You're creating for that's like George Lucas. Mm-hmm. Like you go in, you invent Boba Fett. George Lucas is going to use it. Now George Lucas has paid you, and he's given you contracts or whatever that you signed and you agreed to it, right? Yep. So whatever you've given over, you've handed over. But I also see that like there's a bunch of executives, there's a bunch of people in Disney, there's a bunch of people in the MCU, in the studios, the MCU studios, that are getting rich off of Thanos.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the guy who invented Thanos got his, $2,500.
Right. Thank you in the mail. Right.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
There is something to be said about
really
intellectual
work.
property. Yeah. There's something to be said about intellectual property. Now, the lesson learned isn't really to turn the clock back and break all these contracts and force these companies to pay. the lesson learned is do not sign those contracts.
Yeah.
You know, do not do work for hire on that level anymore, or stand by to be bitterly disappointed if the company that you're working for manages to turn one of these things around and makes $1 billion. There's a lesson in that. I think artists should be paid. I think that they should get what they invented. They get the money for what they invented. But if there are contracts, if there are stipulations, and you sign them, that's why we have contracts, to protect people, to protect the buyer as much as the seller.
Yep. It's pretty good. Now, before we go and put a bow on this episode, what was your final take on Venom: Let There Be Carnage?
I just said I had the same feeling about it that I had about the first one. It's schlock. I mean, I just wish it was funny. I wish I genuinely found it funny and found it a lot more entertaining than I did.
I think it's fair. I think that's fair.
I hope so. I wasn't trying to be unfair to it.
I want to thank everyone who joined in on the live stream tonight. I want to give a shout out to Daninja Genko. I'm going to butcher everyone's name, but I think I actually got that one right.
Pretty much what you do.
No, but that's great. It's on the YouTube live stream. So you got to give shout outs. Brian Everham, Steve Hovecki. I'm going to get his name right. Brian Mayman. Did I get that one right? Mayman. Ooh, look at me. Not butchering. Next week, I'll give you a first-hand account, and Hassan will too, because I'm going to drag him there, of New York Comic Con, let you know how it is. We're at booth 1850. So if you're at New York Comic Con, come check out Sire Studios and Dren Productions, or at booth 1850. That's where I will be. That's where Hassan will somehow be there as well too. And we'll have him meet and greet every single fan that comes up to him and shake their hands. No.
Well, I'll be staying home then.
He will give big bear hugs to anyone.
Yes, I will hug anyone
he'll give a giant bear hug.
Who is a genuine fan.
Booth 1850 will give you our New York Comic Con report, and also they gotta figure out a better staggering of these movies though, because we went like weeks in between movies. And then all of a sudden, it's like Venom and 007. So we'll do a little 007 dive next week as well. And we just got a lot of fun. DC Fandom's coming up in the coming weeks. So we've got a lot to talk about. We hope you guys join us. We will see you all next week. Rogue Wave.